Hey there, nostalgia lovers. Welcome to Nostalgia Area. If you think you remember the 80s, there's a good chance you actually remember a movie version of it. Because the decade we picture in our heads, all neon clothes, wild hair, constant danger, and kids living in a cartoon world of freedom, is mostly a myth built by Hollywood, commercials, and selective memory. We imagine nonstop parties, outrageous fashion on every street corner, and threats lurking behind every bush. We remember blockbuster movies, the birth of MTV, and fears that now feel almost exaggerated. But the real 80s most people lived through? It was a lot more normal, a lot more beige. And the things people were truly afraid of were very different from the ones we joke about today. From the idea that you had to register your hands as a lethal weapon if you knew karate, to the belief that Pop Rocks and soda could make your stomach explode, we were told some pretty wild facts. So today, we're setting the record straight. Here are 10 things everyone thinks were true about the 80s that were actually lies. If you believe every person in the 80s walked around in neon leggings, lace gloves, and mile-high hair, you've been fooled by MTV. The myth is that daily life looked like a music video. The reality? For most people, especially kids and teens, fashion was dictated by budget and practicality, not pop stars.
Part of Madonna's Blonde Ambition tour. Jose, why were you picked to be one of the dancers?
Hand-me-down jeans, basic t-shirts, corduroys, sneakers, maybe a members-only jacket if you were lucky. Those wild, colorful outfits were real, but mostly seen on celebrities, in magazines, or in very specific subcultures. If you showed up to a regular suburban high school dressed like Cyndi Lauper, you weren't getting compliments, you were getting stares. The 80s weren't neon. They were mostly denim. We like to imagine that being home from school meant an endless buffet of cartoons. It didn't. Outside of the sacred Saturday morning cartoon block, daytime television for kids was brutal. There was no 24/7 Nickelodeon, no Cartoon Network, no streaming, no YouTube. If you were homesick at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, your options were soap operas, game shows hosted by guys with suspiciously perfect hair, and reruns of shows your parents watched. You got your cartoons in a small, scheduled window. Miss it? Too bad. Daytime TV wasn't built for kids. It was built for adults at home. Yes, the haircut existed. No, nobody called it a mullet.
Of the sort of mullet golden era, if you like. Everything kind of culminated in that year.
That name didn't really take off until the 90s. Back in the 80s, it had far more colorful names. The ape drape, the Kentucky waterfall, short long, and even the squirrel pelt. And despite what modern parodies show, it wasn't nearly as common as we think. A few celebrities had it, a few guys at school had it. It was not the default male hairstyle of the decade. The haircut is authentic 80s. The name is not. We remember the 80s as this big, fun, expressive party where weird fashion and individuality were cheered on. They weren't. Looking different in the 80s often got you ridiculed. Watch Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time video. There's a scene where her unusual hair gets her laughed at until she's nearly in tears. That wasn't random storytelling. That reflected real life. Those bold looks we now call iconic, back then they were called weird. The 80s didn't celebrate standing out nearly as much as we pretend they did. When people think 80s music, they think Aha, Bon Jovi, Poison, and synthesizers. But the decade's music scene was way more crowded than that. Punk was still alive. New wave was evolving. Hip-hop was exploding. Post-punk, college rock, early alternative. Entire genres were thriving under the surface. And the idea that grunge suddenly appeared in 1991 and instantly killed hair metal? Not true. Those bands were already fading as tastes slowly shifted at the end of the decade. The 80s weren't a two-genre soundtrack. They were a musical melting pot. We're halfway through, and already the 80s are looking a lot less like the version in our heads. What's a so-called fact about the 80s you grew up believing that turned out to be completely false? Let us know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this myth-busting trip back in time, hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more nostalgia illusions to unravel. Every kid in the 80s heard it. Check your candy. Someone might have put razor blades or poison in it. This was one of the biggest moral panics of the decade.
Child is now out of a Portland hospital after she was hurt last night after biting into a piece of candy that had a razor blade.
And it had almost no basis in reality. There were no verified, widespread cases of strangers randomly tampering with Halloween candy to hurt kids. The few real incidents that did occur were usually family members, not strangers, and often involved very different motives. But the media coverage made it feel like an epidemic. Your candy was almost certainly safe. The fear wasn't. Looking back, we sometimes treat Cold War nuclear anxiety like a retro sci-fi aesthetic. It wasn't. For a lot of teens and adults, the threat of nuclear annihilation felt terrifyingly real and immediate.
You could see the x-rays of your hands through your closed eyes.
People didn't obsess over post-apocalyptic worlds because it was cool. They did it because the possibility felt plausible. That dread shaped movies, music, and the mindset of an entire generation. This wasn't fun paranoia. It was genuine fear. It's easy to look back at certain movies and moments and label the entire decade as uniquely awful. And yes, casual racism, sexism, and homophobia were far more visible in mainstream media than today. But the 80s were also a period of intense pushback and change. Activism was growing, social norms were being challenged, and some of the era's biggest moral panics, like fears about child abduction, were wrongly tied to gay men by sensational media and fringe groups, fueling prejudice under the guise of protecting children. The decade had serious problems, but it was also a battleground where those attitudes were being actively fought. In the 80s, many people genuinely believed there was a massive underground network of satanic cults kidnapping children and performing ritual abuse. There wasn't. No evidence ever supported the idea of a nationwide satanic conspiracy. This panic was fueled by sensational TV specials, questionable experts, and fear of changing social norms. And it led to wrongful accusations and ruined lives. Think of the razor blade candy myth, scaled up to a national level. This fear defined 80s parenting, milk cartons, school assemblies, stranger danger drilled into every kid's head. Some claims suggested tens of thousands of stranger kidnappings were happening every year. The real data told a very different story. The vast majority of child abductions were committed by someone the child knew, often a non-custodial parent or relative. The same pattern held true for child abuse cases. But the public panic focused almost entirely on the image of a random predator in a van. This misunderstanding didn't just scare kids. It reshaped parenting, influenced laws, expanded the prison system, and created a culture of fear we still live with today. The biggest 80s panic was based on fundamental misunderstanding of where the real danger was. From fashion to fear, the 80s we think we remember is often a funhouse mirror version of the real thing. Less neon, more normal, less random danger, more misunderstood fears. The decade wasn't just a synth soundtrack with bright visuals. It was complicated, anxious, and very human. And many of the myths we joke about today had real consequences that still ripple into our lives. What myth about the 80s did you believe for years before finding out the truth? Drop it in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into history's biggest misconceptions, make sure you're subscribed to Nostalgia Area. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay nostalgic.